All right, and we are live. Hey, Roshan. Hey, Roshan, I guess you're on mute.
Oh, shucks. Okay. Yeah. No, I was just saying, lovely Sunday morning.
Oh, is it? Nice. A very good morning to you too. And today is also the day you complete 3 years at Vimo, if I'm not wrong.
Okay. So I have a bunch of people wishing me about that, but that's the official 3-year mark. But I joined 3 months earlier than this. So I joined in July, but yeah, somehow in the official records it is October. Yeah, man, long journey.
All right. So how has that journey been for you, right? I mean, you were a founder before you joined Vimo. You had your own startup. And this question you asked to almost every people that were interviewed, right? How has that transition been like? So
Hmm.
let me ask you the same question. How has your journey been?
Caught me off guard, man. I thought we are going to talk about what happened last week. So, uh, well, I mean, to be really honest, I didn't. It wasn't much of an adjustment, or at least, I mean, not to the extent or degree that I had built it up in my head as well. I continue to operate like a founder. I mean, I do things that I would have done if my money was on the line, and solve plenty of things on first principles basis. So, really, really big thanks to the team at Vimo. They've been amazing, right? So yeah, I mean, I couldn't ask for a better team and a better challenge to solve for, right? So yeah, I'm just feeling really grateful about that and really looking forward to the next 3 years.
Awesome. So let's get started for this week's roundup. We have quite a few funding news. But before we get started with that, why don't you run us through the episodes that came out last week?
Hmm. So this week's episodes were pretty interesting. So both of these businesses, Kuku and Kagas, both are app businesses, and we focused a lot on growth, engagement, monetization, and so on and so forth, right? And both of these founders, they just know their shit, man. I mean, like seriously, I was really, really thrilled to listen to Bisu and Snehanshu, right, talk through the various nuances of running this app business, right? And I think it's a damn good primer for anyone interested in figuring out how to run this app-led business. One of the things that I found interesting also was the whole Play Store aspect, right? So how Play Store is sort of a spanner in the works sometimes, and how their opaque processes and the customer service, etc., hurts them, right? um, any business which is growing as quickly as theirs will have to ship a lot more updates, will have plenty of things happening, and it just doesn't help for Google to take the approach that they've taken up until now, which is just very lackadaisical customer service, right? I mean, oftentimes entrepreneurs, developers feel like they're talking to a wall. You should just hear Bisu's experience of how the app was thrown out of the Play Store, and then this was the time they were raising Series A, and he was talking to founders, and I mean he was talking to investors, and they had a fundamental question: Hey, where is your app, right? So yeah, I mean. I hope that aspect of that aspect becomes better, and I think it will. Right? I mean, it has to. And I've said this before. I hope Google is more proactive than I mean, some kind of regulation being like thrust upon it. Right? So, specifically with Kagas, I really like the way Snehanshu and team have thought about product use cases beyond what the scanner is or what it does, right? So I really like that they've thought through a larger product as such, because oftentimes it happens with app businesses that you have a very good hook, but then scaling the product beyond that hook is challenging, right? So they've benefited a great deal from the Chinese app ban and whatever, but there's a lot more coming from them, guys. So I would really stay tuned to the growth in the product going forward. From the Bisu episode, I really liked the community aspect of the platform. The fact that Kuku differentiates itself based on the community, right? The fact that they have these social elements and they don't just act as a platform where you can just dump your audio and then leave it be, right? So which is the case with plenty of podcast platforms. Gunjan, you know this as well, right? So we post on a bunch of these platforms. There's no interactivity, there's no community element to it. The fact that Bisu has thought about that specifically is again fantastic. Yeah. So these are some of the things that stuck out from both these episodes for me last week. What do you think?
No, bang on. You like completely very well. You summarized it. But from Bisu's episode, especially, right? One thing, there was this part where he was talking about that how for tier two, tier three cities, right? Internet and smartphones came in through Geo, and
Yeah.
everyone wanted to ride the whole social media wave and the whole, the all the bling that comes with it, right?
Mm. Mm.
But as and when people get used to it, they want to start deriving value from it. Then they
Yeah.
start moving to educational content, and that is the
Yeah.
spot in which Kuku FM is trying to fit in. And they
Yeah.
have seen
Very
some
interesting.
amazing, they've also seen some amazing results, right? I guess the average listening time to their platform was 40 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the average listening time in the other podcast platform ranges between 15 to 20 minutes. So it's almost double,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That
No, it's
also like
amazing. That was amazing actually. I mean, very good point that you brought up. The whole Bharat user aspect of it, right? The guy who's mobile only, probably using a geo network, and so on. And how he or she scales very quickly from entertainment to value, right? Yeah, that's a very important aspect. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Also, I know we are like spending too much time on this, but another very interesting point which Bisu talked about was that he's the second time founder, right? And
Hmm.
the way he was applying whatever he learned from his first
Both of them actually. Both of them, both Bisu and Snehanshu are second time founders.
Mhm. And the way they were applying what they learned from the mistakes from the first startup, the way they have applied to the second has also been great. So if
Yeah.
anyone of our viewers who is planning, who's working in an early stage startup or is planning to do another startup, please do check these episodes out for some great insights on how to learn from your mistakes. Okay, that
Yeah.
would be like that.
Definitely. Definitely.
All right, so moving on, we have Chargebee that recently raised $55 million to help business move to subscription,
Hmm.
and I guess this is part of the Series F funding.
Right, right. Yeah, so Chargebee is a business that I've followed for a couple of years or more actually. One of those beacons in the whole SaaS space, right?
Right.
And I feel like with more businesses moving online now in 2020, it becomes even more relevant because see there are various nuances to manage pricing and billing that people who are just let's say teachers or some kind of instructors and so on and so forth don't really want to get into, right? So there are so many nuances to this. I mean, you just want to use the software and just leave it to be, right? So and focus on whatever your core is. It could be teaching yoga, or it could be running a math class, or whatever it is. And I can give you an example to this. So recently we were trying to deploy Notion I mean, we wanted to buy a premium license for our marketing team, not for you, Gunjan, but for the creative team within marketing, right? And it just so happens that 20 other people from our org are registered on Notion. How do we manage that billing, right? So we want to bill only for 5 people and not for the 28, but then the default on Notion shows that 28 people will be billed. So
Right.
this is just a small nuance, but there are like plenty of nuances. I mean, even uh, stuff like, okay, I'm running these classes on Zoom, and it's a 1 hour class. How do I charge these people at some point? And there's a free to paid membership, etc. How do I manage those nuances? And these can get very tricky even when you're sub 100, right? So even at 30 or 40, these can get extremely tricky. And the point is that businesses and individuals should not be spending time on these things, on the administrative effects um, of running the business. And Chargebee does a solid job of helping these businesses and freelancers and so on focus on their core business, right? So more power to them. And I also feel, and this is based on a conversation that I had yesterday as well, that we're going to see some mega deals in 2021 in SaaS especially, right? So because capital has to be deployed, and considering that SaaS businesses, a lot of the good businesses anyway have gotten stronger in 2020. You're going to see plenty of Series C, Series D, and beyond 2021, I would say.
Right. Okay, so one question which I wanted to understand personally is that how do you see the whole subscription model expanding in the coming future? Because now that I think of it, almost every B2C service is also trying to follow a subscription based
Hmm.
model. If
Hmm.
you want to, instead of buying a car, you subscribe to a Zoom card or a My Choice card. If you
Right.
want a regular coffee drinker, you subscribe to Starbucks, right? And you get every day you get coffee for a discounted price. So how do
Right.
you see the whole subscription model panning out from B2B, where it is mainly predominant, into the
Hmm.
B2C space? Like any insights on that?
That's a very good question, and I'll talk from the business aspect of it, right? I mean, um, it's a very good model per se, right? So I mean, you have the licensing or you have the advertising model. The licensing is, you just buy my software, whatever it is. I don't care what you're going to do with it, even 10 days from now, right? You just buy it whole, right? Then you have the advertising model, more relevant in the B2C, or let's say the media space per se, where I mean, you really don't care. You just sign up these advertisers, and they're going to pay you for whatever assets you have on your website or app or whatever it is. The subscription model is slightly different, right? It's pay per use, and I think this is the present and the future. You know, in many ways, I would say, because as a consumer as well, I know exactly what I'm paying for, and I get to try the service or product before I jump with both my feet in. And from the perspective of a business, it's a more robust model, I would say. I know people will say that consumers can turn on or turn off the product service whenever they want, but this also means that your top of the funnel increases. Right now, someone who was not going to pay $100 for your product might be tempted to pay 5 or 10, right? And then based on product value, he or she may stick around. So I would say overall it's a net positive, and it's the way of the future for sure.
All right. So moving on, we have a couple of more funding news. We'll quickly run through that. Pesto Tech recently raised its funding from Silicon Valley, and what was interesting about this is how they wanted to expand their workforce remotely, right?
Hmm.
So Pesto is a edtech company that focuses on reskilling people, right? So it's a core engineering platform that helps people from tier two, tier three cities pick up the necessary skills to work in enterprises, right?
Okay.
And they're basing with this funding, they're basing their entire operations on a remote working model.
Right.
So do you think that is actually the future of work?
Man, future of work, new normal. Oh God, if I had a dollar for every time that I heard this every week, right? Well, sure. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying that I'm not saying the median hasn't shifted. Um, but to think that a year from now, let's say when all of this is past us, we will somehow neglect offices is I don't know. I mean, I think it's wishful thinking. We tend to over-index to the present, right? I mean, that always happens. So it's fine. I think it's a good trend, and it's fine. People can make it work. I think. I mean, that's one thing that 2020 has proved to us, right? So yeah,
Anything is
Pesto is also founded by the ex co-founder of Swiggy, right? Rahul Gemini, I think. And this whole income sharing model, and the fact that talent can be anywhere, is going to gain more and more precedence uh, as uh, as we go on, right? So because one thing that I've discussed before as well, if you don't have to be in the Silicon Valley, you don't even have to be in the US, right? So talent can be anywhere, and if you can hire and manage these people, then I think you have an unfair advantage over people or companies that can't do that, right? uh, I want to pick up on Creator OS. I think that's also on your slide, right? So new platform for creators to build and manage businesses. uh, I briefly had a look at their website, and I think their whole spiel of influencer to uh, mm, uh, what do you call it, influencer to creator is a very nice sort of a trend, right? So where you're saying that, hey, I mean, don't rely on the vagaries of a platform to make money. You know, uh, we run our content on YouTube, for example, right? We don't know, I mean, of course, YouTube has its definitions of when and whatever you will be paid, etc. But then, I mean, it's pretty vague. I mean, I know people with a lot more subscribers as well who really can't bet on it, right? You don't know how the ranking works, how the algorithm works. And essentially what you're going to see is a shift of power from platforms to indie makers and creators and so on. So which is, I feel amazing, right? Because makers create the platform at this point of time, I would say, right? I mean, we're 15, 20 years past the whole, okay, give me a platform phase. I think we're in the creator phase right now, where every person can start thinking of them as valuably contributing to the ecosystem. And I think anyone or anything that helps these people monetize that is, in my book, I mean, it's a fantastic endeavor. Yeah.
I mean, if you think of it, right, just look at what prominent, what market share did things like TikTok, Instagram, Reels, and all get, right?
Hmm.
Essentially, these were just platform tools which enabled every user to become a content creator.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this at length, so would highly recommend people to check out his podcasts. The
Yeah,
Gary
of
Vee.
course.
He talks about content creation and how the masses are getting enabled at length, and I'm sure you'll get some great insights.
Yeah, we have
Okay,
a Gary Vee fanboy in the house.
yes. Okay, so before we move on, I'll quickly touch upon the other funding news. The financing arm of General Motors recently invested in augmented reality firm called Envisix that promises to revolutionize HUD displays, heads-up display. And this reminded me of a previous episode that we did with Varun Shah of Eccentric Engine, how he is using AR to improve the buying experience for customers in the car
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
And the other one was one of the largest seed funds ever recorded in India. Fintech startup Uni recently raised $18.5 million. This is not Series A or Series B, but in seed funding. So, and
Interesting.
yeah, this is really interesting. I would really recommend people to read this. We'll link it in the description below.
Cool.
All right. So next we have this tweet by Chamath Palihapitiya. I hope I'm
It's
pronouncing
a
the name.
difficult name to pronounce. Just call him Chamath. Right.
Okay, Chamath. But Roshan, so you had shared this tweet with me, and this was a
Yeah.
complete answer. So you'll need to me and our viewers understand this.
Yeah. So this is pretty interesting, right? SPACs, or special purpose acquisition companies, have existed as a as a mode since the 90s, but we're seeing a ton of investments happen through this mode from 2018 onwards, 2018, 2019 onwards. And essentially what it is it's a blank check, right? So a bunch of really experienced people form this company with the sole purpose of acquiring other companies, right? And it sounds fancy and everything, but it's basically a blank check, right? So you trust in these two or three people who comprise the management to make the best use of your money, right? And from the opposite perspective as well, from the perspective of someone like Chamath, right? um, Look, he's just saying rely on my judgment. I've been right historically, right? I've been an operator, fantastic operator at Facebook. I know what it's like to go from 0 to 500 million growth. I've had a very good track record with social capital, right? I was early on Slack and many other companies,
He's also part
right?
of Virgin, right?
Sorry.
He's also part of Virgin Galactic, I guess.
Yeah, he is, right. So it's basically someone like Chamath saying, I don't want to deal with all of these helpies, right? Now, how do I get this money? And Chamath also has a bit of a history with social capital of not having had the right LPs on, or some kind of a trouble there. So he is just doubling down on SPACs as the way forward, right? And in a way, I would say it's a good way for uh, the retail investors, the public investors, to get in on some private equity action. uh, so So this is pretty interesting. I mean, let's see how it pans out going forward.
Mhm. So this is like, as we discussed in our last roundup, this is another step closer in where investing in startups becomes the mainstream form of investments.
Hmm.
A
You
small
could say
step.
that. Yeah, you could say that for sure.
All right. So next up, a tweet from one of the investors we interviewed at the Startup Operator.
Hmm.
Kushal talks about which products or behaviors are super niche today, but will be super mainstream in 2030. So for
Hmm.
example, like how back in 2014, ordering food from our app, Swiggy, Zomato, was considered to be like, oh, wow, right? But now it
Right.
is like a mode of life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What apps would you bet on?
It's a
That would.
very difficult question because of the time range, right? I mean, to be really honest, I mean, um, hmm,
So
there's
let's break
this,
it down.
there's
Let's
this,
break.
yeah. So let me try to break it down, right? So, and there are some very, very good answers on this tweet as well. I think we should link to it and check out, check that whole thread out, right? I mean, people are pretty visionary, I would say, right? I think there's this Bill Gates quote which says that we overestimate what is possible in 1 year's time and underestimate what is possible in about 10 years time, right? um, and I feel, I mean, even though the answers on this thread are like, fantastic and everything, I think people are grossly underestimating what is going to be possible uh, by 2030, um, because one way of thinking of it is just to project whatever utilities you have at this point of time at 10x or 100x, right? So, a very crude example is, okay, I mean, today it's like 50 mbps internet connections are mainstream. I mean, in 2030 it will be like some few hundred or few thousand gigabytes per second, stuff like that, right? And which is fair. I mean, that is going to happen, right? So these things are, I mean, the train has already left the station in some sense, right? So it's only going to peak on that front. um, what is more interesting is what will happen as a result of those utilities going to a whole different era, right? I mean, going to a whole different sort of a paradigm. That is a sort of a linear way of thinking about it. um, but there is a lot of asymmetry when you think of 10 years down the line, because you don't know what will happen. Honestly, you don't know what will happen just out of the blue that will change your world, right? um, Taleb calls it the black swan event, per se, right? Which has no precedence at all, but it just happens and it changes your entire world. um,
Yeah.
to me, one of the things that seem rather obvious from where we are at this point of time is the fact of digital societies, right? And I was on a podcast with Balaji Srinivasan, the former founder of Coinbase, once before, right? And he happened to mention this concept, and it's been stuck in my head ever since. And I've been trying to thread that, right? I've been trying to think about how this will work. But fundamentally, it kind of makes sense because you have a lot of people online who already have a community, right? As in, I mean, I know the kind of people that I want to hang out with, that I want to share my um life with, right? Now it's the question of sovereignty, right? It's the question of state sovereignty, and figuring out other aspects of living in a particular place, right? um, I think this whole digital societies will sort of I won't say it'll become a reality, or I may be wrong, but I think it'll start to take shape by that time. You'll start seeing a lot of closing in of the physical and digital worlds. I mean, it's already happening, right? Arguably, I think we live more online than offline, right? I mean, we're online, what, 8-10 hours a day at least. I think that is going to be very, very interesting how that plays out, and it has phenomenal sort of impact on the human life experience itself. So yeah, that could be something to watch out for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that was heavy actually. No,
Science
so
fiction, man. Sunday morning.
I mean, just imagine the dark web, the series Dark Web in Netflix comes to reality. Right? That would like what it would become. But I hope we won't move into such a dystopian world.
Nah,
Uh,
man. See, the reason why I don't watch these Black Mirror type of series is because I want to be positive about the world, about what's going to happen. And look, I mean, there are 101 things that you can be uh, annoyed about, and God knows, I mean, you can find that in about an hour's time of scrolling on Twitter. But really, that's not the way to think about the world. You have to be optimistic about the fact that innovation will solve the biggest and greatest problems of all time, right? And it's been happening. So no reason why it won't trend in that direction. Well, fingers crossed.
yeah. No, in fact, so you started off talking about how how this whole digital space is gonna become more and more prominent.
Mm,
So over the weekend, right? Yesterday, I was watching this interview series by MQBHD in YouTube. He's a tech reviewer in YouTube, right? And
mm,
he was interviewing all the big five CEOs: Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, right, and even Mark Zuckerberg. And so
mm,
Mark Zuckerberg's interview, right, was really interesting to understand what sort of research they're doing on the Oculus space, the whole VR AR space, right?
mm-hmm,
And connecting that to Reliance's annual general meeting earlier this year, their
mm.
launch of the Geo glasses, right? So I think by 2030, it will be very common to project holograms and talk to them. That will in the whole work
That'll
productivity
happen
space.
in 3 years time, man. That'll happen in 3 to 5 years time. Don't worry about it, right? So bunch of this stuff is going to happen sooner than you expect, for sure. Yeah. All right, so let's move on to the next thing. Vembu's wisdom, my favorite part of the show, as always. um so Mr. Wembo is a big fan of building production capabilities in the country to grow, and I kind of, tend to skew that way myself, right? And here in this thread, he's basically talking about innovating our way out of the larger problems, right? Whether it's hunger or poverty and so on and so forth. And along the way, he touches upon, the fact that, VC funding has become sort of a norm at this point of time. And, don't get me wrong, there are hundreds of things that we should owe to VC funding as such, right? It gives the capability to expand our innovation, uh, beyond measure, I would say. But somewhere, I think, a section of the VC funded businesses have become, and Chamath coincidentally spoke about this as well, right? It's become a business for business sake itself, right? And I mean, he's basically talking about starting up companies to solve for innovation, to solve for the larger problems in life, right? And it's a fantastic thread. And Mr. Wembu, as always, namaskaram to you. So we'll link to this thread as well. And yeah, you guys should definitely check it out.
Right. So moving on.
Technical
Yeah. So
difficulties.
we have two exciting episodes coming up this week. Why don't you run us? I mean, both of them are from the health tech space. One is an investor in
Yeah.
insurtech startups, and the other one is running an insurtech startup. So, what parallels did you see in the conversations with them, and what can audience expect?
Correction. So Shwetank is an investor in InsurTech, and Rekuram or RV is a healthcare entrepreneur. Hey Gunjan, I think there's a little bit of an echo at your end. Why don't you go on mute?
Yeah.
Yeah. So both of these were fascinating deep dives, right? I'm really fascinated by InsurTech and health, right? So Shwetank walked us through plenty of facets in terms of how disruption is happening in the whole insurance space. I've heard this before, that insurance is one of those industries where nothing changed for 200 plus years, and then everything changed over the last 10 or 15 years, right? Um, and I personally feel that there's just plenty of opportunity in this space. In fact, I mean, somebody asked me this, that if you're going to start up, what is the one space that you would think of at this point of time? And I instantly said InsurTech, right? It's
Mhm.
just ripe for disruption, and there's just so much to do, man. Especially in a market like India, where I said this 2-3 times before, that we're under 15% of coverage, right? So there's only one way that can go. It can only go up, right? So Shwetank, I think we're going to put this out on Tuesday.
Yeah, Shwetank is coming out on Tuesday,
Yeah.
and
So you guys should
Rekudam's episode
definitely,
is coming on Thursday.
yeah, so you guys should definitely check out Shwetank's episode for a deep dive on InsurTech. And RV's was a fantastic episode in terms of understanding healthcare. So I've known RV for 6-7 years now. He's one of the most articulate and insightful founders that I know, like a real thinker, right? I mean, you can assume that he's thought through a lot of these things that he's talking about. Um, and it was really amazing. I mean, some of these episodes, it's almost like a ringside view into how the best people sort of operate, right? So I really consider it a privilege and honor. Healthcare, especially, again, one of those spaces where there's so much disruption that can happen, so much innovation that can happen, but you also have to operate in this paradigm of regulation and people's health at stake and so on and so forth, right? So fascinating deep dive into the healthcare space. So I would really, really watch out for both these episodes next week. Gunjan, are you there?
Last 5-10 seconds of what you just said. Could you just repeat that, please?
No, I was just saying that these are going to be fascinating deep dives into insurtech and healthcare, and people should definitely watch out for these episodes next week.
Right. Yep. All right. So I guess with that we come to the end of this week's Sunday morning roundup. Roshan, any parting words from your side?
I think Sunday mornings are the way to go. Enough of the A/B testing. I think we should just stick to Sunday mornings. The coffee really kicks in, and then there's just the right amount of sunshine. So it's the perfect way to
Yeah.
round up the week, and start a new week ahead. So yeah, this is fantastic. This was a great week. Plenty of learnings from that week, and hopefully the week ahead will be better.
Mhm. Right. All right, guys. Thanks a lot, Roshan, for being with us today morning, and thanks to all of viewers who have joined us live. We'll be linking all the various parts that we discussed in this week's roundup in Twitter as well as in LinkedIn. So do check them out. And as always, please keep on sharing your feedback with us. It helps us improve and deliver more valuable content to you. And until next Sunday morning at 11 a.m., we'll see you. And do check out the episode that'll be coming out this week.
All
Thanks.
right. Bye bye. See you.
Bye.